Okay, so I am sharing the agenda. Just to remember, these meetings are recorded and we do post them on our Florida Commerce YouTube page after we are done. So that usually takes about a day or two, usually when we're able to post them. So if you have to leave early, don't worry, we post these so you're able to catch up later. So let's get into the agenda. It's a pretty short one, but to get things started, there aren't too many updates regarding the digital capacity grant. We still haven't been awarded the letter from the NTIA to kind of further move along in the process. So we're still kind of in a standstill with that, but we're hoping to get that letter as soon as possible. And once we do, we'll be able to move along further into the process. So that's kind of all of the updates I have regarding that. So like I said, it's a really, really quick update, but we're hoping to get it as soon as possible. Next on the agenda, we will jump right into the digital capacity grant presentation. So this is a presentation that focuses on how the state of Florida's digital adoption and use plan kind of correlates with the digital capacity grant. So with the presentation, I'll just kind of go over the basis of the grant and also the digital adoption and use plan. So, for the state of Florida's digital adoption and use plan, the Florida Office of Broadband envisions a future where every Floridian benefits from a connected economy through the meaningful use of high speed internet to enhance educational and employment opportunities, access telehealth, and engage with families and local communities. The state strategies regarding the digital adoption and use plan. The first one is to identify and underserved communities and promote the public and private funding mechanisms to increase service and affordability. Number two, promote accessible digital resources, websites, forums, guidance, and supporting materials. Number three, expand services and resources that support safe and effective use and interaction with high-speed internet. Number four, broaden digital divide device availability through CAIs, a community anchor institution, and community partners and other funding programs. And number five, develop services and resources that support meaningful use of high-speed internet. So in regards to the digital adoption and use plan, there are covered populations which are kind of instructed by the NTIA, and we will further kind of provide the covered populations also, but this kind of a way to define what a covered population is listed here on this slide. So covered households, incarcerated individuals, individuals with disabilities, members of a racial or ethnic minority, aging individuals, veterans, individuals with a language barrier, and individuals residing in a rural area. So here on this slide is a screenshot of the digital adoption and use framework plan. It kind of gives you a vision of what Floridians can expect to benefit from this kind of plan that we're implementing in the office, what's kind of being instructed by the NTIA, what their objectives are, and then also the strategies that we will be focused on, which I just spoke about. So on to the digital capacity grant. I know we probably said this a lot, but kind of still just to go over it again. The office was able to allocate approximately $7 million over a 5-year span, which in our first year we'll be getting around $40 million. For the first round we'll be getting at. And then for the next few years, there will be 2 other subsequent tranches after the initial one, with them both being around $15 million in the 2 following years. So the plans that we like to implement with the digital capacity grant is strategy 2, which promotes accessible digital resources, websites, forums, guidance, and supporting materials. Strategy 3, that expands services and resources that support safe and effective use and interaction with high-speed internet. Strategy 4, which will broaden a digital device availability through a CAI and community partners and other funding programs. And then lastly, strategy 5, that develops services and resources that support meaningful use of high-speed internet from the digital adoption and use plan. So I think this slide is even though it's very short, is probably one of the most important ones to pay attention to. So these are the eligible activities that we'll be focusing on once people are able to apply for this grant. So this will cover digital literacy, skills training, e-government and civic engagement, device distribution, economic development, telehealth services, and online accessibility. Okay, so like I said, that is a very quick overview of the state's digital adoption use plan and digital capacity. Does anyone have any questions right now? Okay, if we don't have any questions from anybody, I would like to turn it over to the LTPTs. I think it would probably be best. I have a question. Is there a question in the chat? Um, yes, I will try. I'll get permission from our leadership to see if I'm able to share this PowerPoint with everybody. We have to get that approved through our comms department. So I'll double check to make sure when I'm allowed to send this out to y'all. But if I'm not able to, at minimum, we use this data. But if I'm not able to, y'all can really find this information on our website as well. And then at minimum, may you.
Sorry about that. It was a mistype. So
I know
yes, at minimum, can we use the information that you're sharing today? And you just kind of addressed that with a yes. Thank you, Aaron.
Yes, no, definitely. You're allowed to share kind of what I talked about today with anyone that you would like to. But just the PowerPoint itself, I have to get that approved to be able to share that with, people outside of our office right now. And then how will CAIs be allowed to engage through our local LTPC? So yeah, CAIs can definitely engage on this project or this grant, sorry. So essentially, let's say if I think St. Lucie has a Boys and Girls Club, a part of their LTPT. We would classify that as a CAI. And so you can, work along with that Boys and Girls Club and, say an eligible activity would be device distribution. Let's say you have 50 kids who come to the Boys and Girls Club, and the majority of them do not have access to laptops or iPads or something at home that can help them do their homework and everything. That would be something you could put into the grant application with this device distribution. You're working it through a CAI, and you're also working through with your local LTPTs. So I think that's a good way to coordinate with one another, if that's kind of the route you're wanting to go. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Erin, I may not, this is Jamie from Palm Beach County. Nice to see you again. I don't think I asked that well enough. So during our last call you were on, you heard that we are actually providing digital literacy classes and device distribution. And so do we need to partner with a municipality in order to apply, or can we apply directly on our own?
I think y'all should be able to directly apply on your own. Let me double check on that. But just in my opinion, I think it would be best to do it through your local technology planning team, just because if you get a support letter from them and work along with them, I think it would further boost up your application in receiving any award.
Beautiful. That's exactly what I needed. Thank you so much, Erin.
Yeah, of course. And then Peter. So regarding BEAD right now, there aren't too many updates that I can really speak of. I know the challenge process has ended. And Josh, do you have any updates that you can provide?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so we'll look to have determinations made beginning of December. We'll publicly post those determinations and fulfill our transparency requirements to the NTA and have that submitted before the end of the year, which in that case, we will then begin opening queuing with NTA. That's really the next step in BEAD before we can really allocate or kind of get some of this out the door, just because we have to have that final BSL list approved before we can do some infrastructure-esque things. So that's kind of where we're at on the challenge process, and specifically more the BSL related to bead stuff.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Ethan, your question for digital capacity grant, are the e-government and civic engagement for one-time cost or ongoing? I don't know the potential answer to that. Paul, I know you're on the call. Could you provide more insight on that?
What was the question, Aaron?
So the question is for digital capacity grant, are the e-government and civic engagement for one-time cost or ongoing?
Not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, sorry, I probably wrote that really weird. So for like the eligible activities, so the eligible activity for the e-government civic engagement, so us basically, on website through software, engaging with the public, would that any applying for the grant, would that be any one-time cost, or is there any way to do like an ongoing cost, like for software cost or anything like that?
I mean, you could put that in your application. There's no prohibition against it, but you'd be graded based on what your costs were total. So there are some allowances for on time, but we're gonna put limitations on these things, right? Because
Yeah.
these funds are in 3 separate tranches, so they gotta be tracked separately. So any of those that are gonna cross multiple lines, we'll just have to be cautious of. But yeah, there's nothing that stops you from putting an application out there that says you want to put a website out there and pay for software for 3 years or 4 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Paul, for answering that as well. Another question, how can we get residents whose addresses were identified in grant awards or who may have questions about their nearby services connected to ISPs directly? I could probably get you in contact with our grant managers regarding that information. I think Aaron Allen is on the call. Aaron, if you could provide any insight on that as well.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I was checking on emails.
Oh, no, you're fine. So someone asked, how can we get residents whose addresses were identified in grant awards or who may have questions about nearby services connected to ISPs directly?
That's a good question. Currently, I don't really have a way to connect them to the ISP directly. If they want, they could send me an email and I will forward their contact to the relative ISP and get them to reach out.
Okay, yeah, no. I'll share your email in the chat, but Samuel, that is a good question to ask. Sometimes we do have LTPTs who reach out to us asking for updates, and as the office, we are not allowed to share like direct contact information from ISPs that we know. The best thing that we can do is kind of let them know that, hey, this person would like updates and they have to contact you themselves. We cannot provide that contact information. But I'll put Aaron's email in the chat and we can see what we can do for you. And then David, I saw that your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Along that line, this kind of came up, as you will probably recall, Aaron, during our LTPT meeting, and it's in very similar vein. Are there mechanisms that the state has the ability to send back to the LTPTs that would allow us to get an idea of how we're tracking toward what's been awarded, how much has been spent, those type of metrics, so that, we keep getting these broad statements like we're done, and we don't have a way of really measuring to that and don't know what's been allocated, funded, consumed, and I did not know if there were any mechanisms that either the state had or any other suggestions that the other LTPTs may have on how they are gathering that information, tracking it, and measuring it. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, of course. Um, that is a great question to ask. The best way I can kind of explain it right now, just because I don't particularly deal or handle grant information regarding that, I know it can be tricky just because there may be kind of confidentiality that may run around it. But if Paul or Aaron, who focus more on the grant side, would like to provide any input, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So this is Paul. We are working on a dashboard to provide that information. We don't have an awful lot of projects that I could consider done. So I don't know who's telling you that, but we are going to put a dashboard up that'll identify every project, what its original dollar value award was, what progress they're making towards completion, and then when it's complete, it'll have a completion and the total number of locations served, both in the residential, business, and community anchor institution side, and how many people that represents. So if that's the information you're looking for, it is forthcoming. It's just not available right now.
Thank you, Paul. And I appreciate that information. And yes, that is something very similar to what we're after. And once again, it depends on what is your definition of done. So that's the other piece. You sometimes have to really drill into asking that question. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So we do get progress reports here that'll be part of that. So it'll be able to show you when they're at a 25% milestone or a 50% milestone or whatever, along with some maps that show you the progress that they're being made. And then when Aaron told you earlier that we're really prohibited from giving out information on ISPs, technically not correct, right? We can give you that information, but it's not going to get you to anybody that'll be able to help you, right? Because we're talking to vice presidents and chief financial officers and stuff like that, and they don't know the day-to-day workings of every location in their network. So we can provide them the number, and then they can get back to you with the person that can give you that information. But any contacts that we would give you would never be able to get to that detail anyhow.
And Paul, if I may interject, we can also, as collectively within the LTPTs, I know for like with Polk County, we have really good connections, for both for Spectrum, Frontier, and Comcast, because they're our primaries. So if we want to share that internally with each other, I don't think there's anything that prohibits us from doing that.
No, you'd be perfectly fine doing that.
I'm happy to do so.
Okay. Thank you, Paul, for providing all the information. That was really great. So if we don't have any more questions right now, I am going to ask, oh, Leo has a question.
Not necessarily a question, Aaron, but thank you. But more of a just providing more insight to a lot of what you've already spoken to. The past couple days leading up to last week, Friday, the office did hold a webinar specifically for two groups. One was for the state and technical colleges and K through 12 technical education schools that have an opportunity to be involved with a lot of what we already spoke about, specifically for digital capacity, and then what we have identified in our B plan for workforce development. So if those of you that are interested in seeing what was shared with them, please feel free to just go to our website. Those slide decks and recordings have been posted to our website. Again, all we've done, it was more of an informational webinar that was given to those specific audience at the technical schools and state colleges, as well as the local workforce boards and the community action agency. So the content for both presentations were very, very similar. It just was geared to those specific audiences. So if you like, feel free to visit that, those slide decks and webinars for your convenience, and additional information regarding the workforce development program as well as the digital capacity grant. Any questions? All right. That's all I have, Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. So now we will move forward to the digital capacity brainstorming session. I know on last month's call, Erica from Miami-Dade suggested this. Jacob and I thought it was a great idea. So now we will move forward into this brainstorming session. So those who are not a part of an LTPT or are not LTPT leaders and not a part of the Office of Broadband, I will ask for you to step off the call. Again, this will be posted later on the YouTube page, probably in a day or two. I hope y'all have a very safe and happy Thanksgiving, and we will see y'all in December. Okay, I'll give it a minute or two, everybody, to see all who need to step off, and then we'll move forward to the brainstorming session. Okay, I think we are good to go. So if anyone has any, ideas off of the top of their head, you can go ahead and take the floor. If y'all need a few minutes to think about it or, just to start the conversation, you're more than welcome to go ahead.
Hey, Aaron, this is Derek. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Just wanting to get a feedback from someone or from you all there at the office about including all of our libraries being a main focus in this digital equity piece, especially for rural areas, because they are pretty much the mainstay. There's not a lot of community centers and a lot of areas where the rural places are involved, and most of that is residing because of real estate and because of where people are residing in terms of places to go, and the libraries have been positioned in well enough places where it's population and where they feel already an existing customer base. So would that be a great place to start in that digital capacity place? And how does the Office of Broadband looks at that?
No, I think that would be a great idea. Connecting with your libraries. I think that is suggested on the LTPT is that whenever we ask y'all to form these, that you have different entities that are on the board. So that can be your healthcare, that can be your libraries, that can be your school districts. So libraries are a great supportive system we've really found from the office. Um, they can host those digital literacy classes. You can work along with them when it comes to device distribution as well. So I think connecting with them and really getting them involved with this grant would be a really, really great idea. So thank you for bringing that up though and starting the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Does anyone have any other ideas, ways that you are trying to seek, out this grant by connecting with other CAIs who might be on your LTPT or just even in your community in general?
Aaron, this is David Palmer, Polk County, Florida. Quick question and or update. We just did, as part of our larger group, which is Polk Vision, a literacy summit that seems to work very nicely in conjunction with this. We had the superintendent of schools was there, the library cooperatives were all there, early learning, even some of our workforce development folk were there. And one of the big challenges for them is understanding, are they eligible individually? Are they supposed to work specifically with us and it has to come through a separate entity? And can schools apply?
So that is a great question. From my knowledge, you don't have to go directly through your LTPT. It can be, an entity such as, you know, let's say if, um, just how Derek mentioned the libraries in his area. Let's say if two of those libraries are like, okay, we're going to apply on this grant on our own. I think that is allowed for this grant, but I think it would be I think it would be a better idea to work along with these groups instead of not working along with them just because um the phrase kind of like the more the merrier a little bit. Y'all can further collaborate and kind of further support each other. And I think having, the support from an LTPT and another entity like that can kind of further boost your score when it comes to these grants instead of just working individually by yourself. Um, Schools, I'm not sure are allowed to apply. Paul, do you know any specifics regarding that?
Yeah, there's no prohibition, but I think we're gonna go the same route that we went before, so it'll be kind of the same eligibilities, units of local government, and for more often than not, schools are not considered local government, but I would encourage everybody to, they're gonna be required to get a recommendation from the LTPT, right? So that's gonna force them to work with you anyhow. And it's better for them to work with you and get that letter of support than it is to try to submit something on their own. Because if they don't have the support of the LTPT, it's highly unlikely that they'll end up with an award anyhow. So yeah, it's in everybody's best interest to all work together, whether that means the LTPT reaching out or the libraries or the community anchor institutions or nonprofits reaching out to the LTPTs, whichever the case may be. Your application is only going to be that much better with the support of the LTPT and the overall knowledge of what the county needs, right? You know what your county needs. You guys have been doing this stuff now for the better part of a year and a half to 2 years, some of even longer. So you have a pretty good wish list of things that you'd like to see happen. So I would reach out to some of those nonprofits and libraries and other government entities and see if they're on board with some of the stuff that you would like to see happen. And that way you can work collaboratively together, get the best application going, and do some benefit for your community.
Oh, Beatrice, you raised your hand.
Yes. I had a question regarding something that came up during the Florida Broadband Summit, and that was a statewide digital literacy framework, like skills tests or something to do with standards. So I wanted to know how the broadband office was moving toward that. If there, we, um, and my apologies, I'm from Pinellas County, been part of a digital inclusion network. We have some standards that we use, and we're happy to provide some thought leadership on if the state was looking at doing something statewide with respect to standards. Or is that something that's we had not considered asking a grant for anything like that?
Yeah, so this is
Um,
Paul again. I think that's a good idea. We are gathering all of that information from a variety of programs. There's probably 30 or so different variations of what digital literacy consists of, not just in Florida, but nationwide. So we would like to try to standardize that stuff so that we can have a standard curriculum that everybody's teaching the same thing and everybody understands which components have to be included in that digital literacy. So if you have something that's available, yeah, please share that with Aaron and we'll put that together with the other information that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. Peter, I see that you've raised your hand.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for another good meeting. In Osceola, it's been interesting how the focus has evolved. It was very infrastructure oriented. And what they've done is they've created a, like not necessarily a subgroup, but they've got some small meetings now where the healthcare groups are getting together and kind of talking about what the big need is kind of collaboratively. And they did it two, one for telehealth and healthcare and one for workforce. And it seems to be very productive when they get these smaller groups together and they talk in the language of that industry or that direction. So that's been helpful. And one of the ways we're referencing sort of solutions is to look at some of the larger markets nationally. I know Philadelphia, Dallas, and Chicago have pretty good websites which show their active programs because they've been at this for maybe 10, 15 years. And the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, the NDIA, they have really good models that we've used, some of their forms and things to help pull together information from a whole lot of different sources. So modeling after some of the larger, more experienced markets in terms of what programs are available, and then creating small groups seems to be very methodically moving Osceola along. Just an aside.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great kind of point of view to bring into this. I think it would be interesting to be able to have kind of like a depending on how big your LTPT is, to further along to bring more of these members from other entities in and kind of, separate them during the meeting so like they can kind of have their own brainstorming session. Let's say if it's all of the school members, the libraries and the healthcare's workers, they separate, talk about what they need to talk about, and then towards the end of the meeting, come together again and kind of, express, where they see concerns and need improvements of, and to, further elaborate on the subject of, okay, how can we further work together on achieving this? So that's a great point of view to bring in. So thank you.
Well, and one of the ways it evolved was that um, there's a significant part of the county that has no broadband, period, right? So as we were talking, the fellow who heads up the libraries sort of moved to the front now because he's got an area where they didn't really have broadband at the library there, right? And now they're talking about putting in computers and building a computer lab and how much bandwidth do they need? And then do they need the digital navigators to help the people who are going to get broadband for the first time? So, and then that's where it morphs into, well, then how do you get them onto telehealth if they're first getting onto internet, right? So it is really helpful to have them all talk together, but then break out and talk in their languages and what their common issues are. Because as we add broadband to all these new homes, it's all fresh to these individuals in most cases. So I think we're going to have a pretty rich application that's focused in one of the areas that didn't have broadband before, and it'll be focused towards workforce and telehealth, plus obviously the enablement, helping them get a device, et cetera. So it's that type of discussion has been very helpful in Osceola, very methodical.
Okay, awesome. I'm happy to hear that. I think Derek, I saw you unmuted yourself. Did you have a comment?
I did. You got good eyes. Yeah, I did, only because based on the last comment that was said about the labs and everything else, in part of this grant, because we have found in our conversations that space and allocation and rental space or even some kind of space for these things to happen always come into play. Do you know whether in this grant piece, any monies or anything associated with that will be that you can apply for to get facilities or anything like that for to help assist the digital equity piece?
That may be a little tricky to go around. I think Paul may be able to provide more better insight on that. Just because I feel like that may pertain to more of like our older grants that we had in the past, but that kind of focused more on building, kind of providing more of like the space area for it, to where
Right.
digital capacity is for more of like, devices, digital literacy, that kind of thing. But Paul, if you could provide more insight on that as well.
Yeah, so remember, this capacity grant is to implement those activities that we identified in our digital adoption and use plan. So it's not something that we can just create all of a sudden. And again, like Aaron said, construction's probably not going to go very far in this program.
Gotcha.
We're only talking about $70 million. Now, if you've got a space that you want to do some rehabilitation for, and it's going to cost a couple $100,000, that's certainly something worth looking at.
That's more of what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah,
Paul.
so if you wanted to do some rehabilitation and then, get some laptops or tablets or desktops or whatever in that rehabilitated location for the public use, that's fine. But there won't be
Okay,
no
great.
construction or major work.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Does anyone have any more kind of brainstorming ideas, concerns at all before we kind of move on to updates? Okay. Before we do move forward, I'm not sure if y'all saw this in the chat, but Sean Lewis, who used to work with us, he did put in a very good point of view, was that collaborating with the LTPT will help prevent duplication efforts throughout the communities. So like Paul really said, with this grant, they, let's say if it's the library that wants to apply for this, they're going to be kind of forced to work with LTPTs, just because they need a essentially like a recommendation letter. But I think that's a great thing to talk or kind of talk about as well, is that whenever you do meet with these other government entities, CAIs, is to make sure that there aren't many duplicating efforts throughout the community. But on to the last part of the agenda, we'll go over any LTPT reports. So if any leaders or members have any updates, y'all are more than welcome to take the floor.
Aaron, this is David again, and I know that, I think you kind of hit it at a high level, is that we don't have an official timeline that we think that the capacity grant will be available. But do we have kind of a high level concept? You don't think it's going to be later than February? And the reason why I'm asking is we would like to put another workshop together like we did last year. And we had one of our participants actually get an award from that workshop. Kind of what Sean was referring to is bringing them in, having a workshop, talking about, what are the things, kind of like the slide information that you gave us. But we want to do it where it's relatively timely. Do you think if we did it first part of January that we would be behind the 8 ball, or do you think that that's probably a safe bet that we could go ahead and do it in that arena and plan for it then, and then they would be ready to apply?
That's really tough call, in all honesty. I genuinely do not know when they're gonna, provide us that update. There is a change in administration right now, so that may affect it to a certain degree. But I really can't give you a best bet on it. I would really hope that you could do it in January, but maybe to be safe, you could push it off to February. Since it is, Thanksgiving is next week. And then with Christmas being almost like 3 weeks after, I would be a little surprised if we got that award letter by then, but we might be surprised and get it by then. But I'll definitely, it's totally your call to make, but I really can't give you a concrete answer of when we're really expecting it.
And then are we looking at an open application period of like a 30, 60-day time frame, similar to what we've done before?
Yes, I think it'll kind of be a complete copy off of like our digital adoption and kind of other grants that we've done before. So it'll be a pretty quick turnaround, which I'm hoping for everybody.
Thank you. And then I also dropped into the chat the contact information we have for 3 of our bigger providers in Polk County. I cannot seem to find our current for Comcast. So that's helpful for anyone. Both Jack and Kate are good at getting down to address level. And they are kind of state resources. So if you have questions, is this one been included, not been included? They have been very good at giving out that kind of information.
Thank you, David. Beatrice, do you have any updates?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I accidentally hit I turned.
Oh no. Oh no, you're okay. Don't worry about it. Okay, does anyone have any other updates before we jump off? Okay, so we'll end the meeting pretty early today. Again, if we have any, crazy updates regarding digital capacity, we'll try to get it out to y'all as soon as possible. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office. Other than that, it was great to talk to everybody. I hope this kind of helped with kind of getting ideas for the digital capacity grant. We're really excited for that. It's going to focus more on the community development sides regarding broadband. So our next meeting will be December 19th. Other than that, I hope y'all have a very happy and safe Thanksgiving, and we will see y'all in December.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff.